Okay, hello. Welcome back again. This is day 22, 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tom Nyback, and we are just pressing right along. 6 more days, and we'll have a habit. I might try to have a little celebration or something. And like I always like to do, I like to say I'm informed. We're talking about racial issues in America, black life, and a white-dominated, powerful white nation. Is there equality? Have we come any distance from slavery? We recently celebrated Martin Luther King Jr.'s uh, birthday, his legacy, and all that. Was it effective? Are blacks better off today? What would he say if he came back? So I leave those questions more or less open-ended for you to decide. It's going to depend on when you were born, what you know about it, what you understand about the reality of how black life manifests in America. Um, you'll find I'm pretty biased, but it's okay. The information I'm giving you has a lot of historical basis, and the impact can be seen just even today in the 21st century. In my opinion. I'm informed by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. He's got a handful of books out. First book I read is called A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask, and my mind is just blown. We'll be referring to this text. I'm going to read it again myself. Another text that we're going to actually focus on today is Black Labor and White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. And we're going to go through some things here in the appendix today. Also, we consult another great book. I'm almost finished reading this one, and I read Black Labor, White Wealth. Powernomics, National Plan to Empower Black America, a lot of good stuff in here. I actually think some of that stuff is already going on. I'm actually coming to the conversation a little late, but he's still active. I just saw a video just a few days ago. He was speaking at an event. So he's still alive and still active. I say that because I tend to, I get on YouTube and I see these videos and stuff, and I don't keep up with current events like that. So, it's a surprise that, some of the guys and women that I'm enjoying, sometimes they've been dead for a couple years. But Dr. Anderson's still going. We need him. He's our champion. He's the um, that just a voice that black people need right now. Also, occasionally we'll come out of Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe's masterpiece work, fictional portrayal about black slave life in white slavery America. Okay, to get right to it, because this is another introduction. I know we have a lot of introductions, but I like to lay the groundwork. If you can just give me a few minutes, lay some groundwork. I try to label these videos accurately so you can go back, and I'm including notes. That's for especially the people who have issues with data and can't necessarily take advantage of the videos. The notes roughly follow the videos and vice versa. It's up to you which one is best, but if you don't have the data, don't worry. If you occasionally get a video, it's okay because the notes roughly give you the gist of these videos. So let's get going. I'm coming out of today, Black Labor and White Wealth, and I want you to get these books. They're very, very informative, very factual. Of course, they're weighted towards empowering blackness, making blackness unique, very special, very specific, exclusive things that other nations and peoples and tongues do in America and continue to do. Whites, Asians, Hispanics. And they do it very clearly, and there's no stopping their discrimination, their practices, their economic attacks and assaults, and retrieving black dollars and not reciprocating economically. But today, I want to spend, this is an introduction, I want to spend a couple days in the appendix of this book. There's a list of dates and these laws every few years or so, 20 years, 30 years, sometimes, sometimes the 1700s seems to be very active with these laws. Some new law would come out to encroach and restrict the slave in those years. And I refer to them as encroachment laws. He writes them as boundary safeguards and restriction laws. And that's a lot of them. I'm sure it's not all of them. But I see these laws and the succession of these laws. He's divided north and south, and we're going to go a couple days talking about the south, a couple days talking about the north. And one of the things that comes to my mind when I think about these laws is how white power adjusts to black progress. And one thing I can give you an example. We talked a couple days ago about meritorious manumission, where a slave could do a great act or enrich his master. More importantly, inform on his group or her group, and receive this meritorious manumission, which was freedom for the slave. We talked about two slaves that received meritorious manumission. One was Will. He's kind of noted as one of the first. He informed on slaves organizing for revolt. And Hayward Shepherd, who he was shot dead by John Brown's party at Harper's Ferry. Right? Hayward Shepherd was already emancipated, freed. He already received meritorious manumission. So it was a little kind of evil of him to keep informing on slave and slave activity when he received that. But his mind was so indoctrinated into the slave system that he thought it was a good thing. So that's one of the things, when I say white power adjusting to black progress. I worry, what if incarceration and prison enforcement dried up? What's white America going to do with empty prisons and bored law enforcement officers? What if everybody suddenly got struck with some serious moral fiber and let go of the drugs, let go of crime? What's going to happen to these private organizations that are making incredible amounts of money off seeing people locked up, especially disproportionate numbers of blacks? And what if they didn't have black communities to cruise and find blacks and lock up and things like that? So some of these laws I look at and I say, this is an adjustment. My guess is the blacks are in white the white mind, they maybe adjusted to some previous crazy law and find a way to find wiggle room and prosper in that position. And still, here comes something else. I could picture people thinking along those lines. Some interesting other laws. We'll get to these now. I'm not going to go into the laws specifically in depth. We got a whole year left to do this, but I found this appendix very interesting and telling, just about the behavior, the mindset, how institutionalized slavery was. We'll talk about the naturalization law. A lot of these things in the appendix anyway occurred and through the 1700s. Naturalization law stipulated that the United States would be a white nation. And it's interesting, I don't know these, like, where's the overturning of these laws? Okay, some of these things are just still in effect in my mind. So I'd rather see some overturning, repealing of these laws that are probably still on the books. As I go through this study, I'm going to do my best to be accurate in the delivery, but we'll talk about that, and like how America, they'll make what appears to be a stronger law to gloss over something they've already said, something they've already put in writing. And I find it more favorable, more agreeable if they would come out, if the American lawmakers would explicitly repeal some of these laws. The Louisiana Expulsion Act. Now, I didn't look at the date specifically, but I'm guessing this happened around emancipation. That law said that any free blacks had to leave Louisiana in 60 days. They had 60 days to get out if they were free. And this runs into white power always pulling the rug out. Always, they disenfranchise blacks so much that the black person in America has no means of sustenance, no means to sustain themselves. There's no foothold. There's no place they can lay their heads safely except under slavery. If you remember, if you've read Roots, there's a part in there where one of Alex Haley's ancestors, who happened to be Tom's a blacksmith, and shortly after Civil War, emancipation, Tom has a pretty successful blacksmith business, and some random white man comes to Tom and says, "Look, you can't have that business unless you go through me." Like he's the syndicate of the blacksmith, the blacksmith guild or something. And Tom, I don't know if the Great American Salute was invented yet, but that would be my response. Anyway, Tom, he puts his shop, in a sense, on wheels, on a carriage. And so he's got one of the first mobile blacksmith shops, and he, does an end around over this white man's presumption to take over Tom's business. But that's what happens in America. Then I say it goes on now. Not blacks aren't landowners in general. That there are communities in the states that I'm hearing about, and I got to do some research and check in. But for the most part, blacks don't own their land. Blacks are tied up in apartments or renting this, renting that, paying somebody else's mortgage, while they just, sit back, collect, watch their money compound and stuff. And blacks are still using their labor and resources to enrich uh, other races that are much more, that are in some senses and cases, hostile to black Americans. So that, expelling blacks that way down in Louisiana, you don't have a whole lot of choices. Moving up north, you got Mississippi, Alabama, you got Florida out to the east, and the territories west were still being developed, were still wild, and blacks could not own any land out west. They did not have any rights to that land. I didn't see any mention as I just skimmed through the appendix there, but we've got to get into that. Gold rush. Hearing about wealth and resources out west, blacks could not have that. Blacks were forbidden. You know, uh, risking violence to their person to lay claim, unless they went to work for a white man. There are laws about no free persons of color could own a business, could be a business owner in some areas. Well, have a business license with ownership as well. Oh, excuse me, and we'll talk about that great Dred Scott decision. A black slave, and actually I think his name wasn't Dred Scott, but somehow that name came about. We'll get to that. Black slave left a slave state, went to a free state, and when he got back, by some means, he made the case that because he left the slave state, went to a free state, that he should now be free. And by some miraculous, I say miraculous circumstance, his case went all the way to the Supreme Court of the time. That's pretty impressive. I'm sure he had a lot of white advocacy and help. And remember that not all whites, not all Asians, not all Hispanics are directly involved in an agenda against blacks. Try to imagine that. It's like saying all blacks play basketball and sell crack cocaine. It's ridiculous, right? We're talking just about overarching communities and some of the difficulties here in America. But Dred Scott, and this was 1857, Dred Scott, his case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled, and we'll get to the exact word, I'm going to paraphrase here, that a black man won't have more privileges than a white man. Is paraphrase that boils down to, in that decision. And there's a lot of laws and stipulations and all that. Remember Maryland, 1638, where blacks will not participate or have access to white wealth, in a sense, which means blacks are up the creek with no resources because whites owned it all. Okay, so we'll talk about that. So that's just a skimming over. So we're going to look at these laws and how blacks just this constant barrage, just no letting up. the pressure was constant and intense and invasive, just constant encroachment on them. Any kind of daylight that the slave got, or even an emancipated person, because even after emancipation came Jim Crow, semi-slavery, black codes, just constant, just all over. And to also remember that the blacks did not participate in the decision, obviously. This is white people way off remote somewhere high on a hill making these declarations, making all of this, all these challenges. I mean, they just making up stuff to keep blacks apart from. Now, this is it's important. We're looking at this in the big picture and all that. I want it to be like that because I have some suspicions that this mindset, this white privilege, white entitlement, this vigorous white state that continues to oppress blacks is like so normalized and normal for whites, even to this day. Now when I look at some of my difficulties and some of the challenges I've had in conflict with whites, it's almost like, hey boy, what? How dare you, have a position? How dare you? Not only do you have a position, but it's contrary to mine, kind of mindset that I've run into. And now that I'm getting this education from Dr. Anderson, I'm seeing, I've been so ignorant, I didn't even know what I was running into out there. Conversely, on that other side is my fear is that Black America has lapsed into this a state of profound apathy. Why don't we hold politicians accountable? I mean, this is the how the mindset reveals itself in the 21st century. We don't hold politicians accountable. We've got a white marble statue of Dr. Martin Luther King on the Washington Mall, carved by an Asian. Um, um, we're not uh, united to the point where we can make some serious changes and uh, employ some accountability in government. Um, we're not business leaders. We have our superstars, but they are paid individuals. Are in all the entertainment. Um, and the entertainment goes and is appropriated by white people who make millions and millions, and the percentage that blacks get on return is minimal. Okay, things like that need to happen, but from early 1600s on to the present day, we're getting upwards of 500 years of a normalcy of blacks being apathetic, voting, and I'm reading a lot of this in the Powernomics books. Just voting for show, and there's black interests are not addressed. Okay, and this is great discussion even for Dr. Martin Luther King celebrating his birthday. We're coming up into February, Black History Month, so we got a lot of great symbols, and we've got guys that have made a billion products from peanuts. We've had a black president. We've got our martyrs out there. Malcolm, Evers, Dr. King. Okay, some of our Chicago brothers and sisters, things like that. But we still are not getting the returns on our investment, right? Because there's a normalcy of blacks not getting return on their investment. It's normal for whites to get increases on their investment 100, 200, 500 times. So in this block of laws over the 200 years, essentially, that we're going to look at over the next few days, is just the mindset. America, back in the Declaration of Independence, white Americans said, okay, we're tired of some guy sitting remotely somewhere, not connected with our struggles. We don't like him creating laws and edicts and things like that on us. We're going to war and get away from that. But they went ahead and did the same thing to people on the soil. That's why I did that devil's advocate piece about the comedy of opportunities. Had blacks been remotely somewhere, I think even just a couple 100 miles away, this kind of control could not have been possible. But because blacks were embedded in and amongst the white population, there was just nowhere to go. And the white power just took that opportunity and oppressed and caused just devastation on the people. So part of my fear is that the mindset, the spirit of what happened continues to happen, and that there's possibly a permanent mental phenomenon here in America with whites and blacks, and the Asians are mimicking the whites, but it's the whites that did this, right? And blacks were the victims. And my fear is that any kind of resistance against this mental phenomenon is just going to keep compounding the problem. We need to be aware of exactly what it is we're trying to get away from, what we're trying to get to. Blacks need to have an awakening, and I think everybody needs an awakening about what they're doing, why they're doing it. Decide, do we want to be selfish or do we want to be truly altruistic? It just doesn't seem, there's no middle ground on this. So for the next couple days, we're going to breeze through some laws between the North and South and all that. If you have the book, we're coming out of Black Labor and White Wealth. Thanks for spending time with me. My name is Tomlins Nybeck, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.